Okay, so part one, the topic that we're going to talk about today is dating. So we are going to kind of hear from our experts, our team. I know you're shaking.
Should we pass the mic around and have our panel introduce themselves? Yeah, can we do that?
There we go, Sam.
There we go. Why don't we start here with Jacob, since Jacob, oh no, you go start on that side. There you go.
Hi, Ryan Van Durs.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. I mean, are you a believer? You've been coming to Saddleback?
I've been coming to Saddleback since about 2012. I just recently joined the ministry a few weeks ago and got recruited for the panel. Awesome. I live in Anaheim. The Anaheim campus is actually really close to me, but I choose to come here because they just have such amazing things going on. They have so many activities, and it's just a great culture. I'm happy to be part of it.
Great.
Hi, I'm Kara Arnold, and I've been coming to Saddleback since the early 2000s, and I just recently became the leader for Girls Talk 2030. So, girls, if you don't have anything on Valentine's, we'd love to have you. We're going to have our second one Wednesday night. Come join us. We're going to have lots of fun and just shower you with love.
Hi, I'm Mike Chambers. I've been coming to Saddleback since about 2003, and I'm a counselor here and also lead 3 other groups here at Saddleback and one at Marist.
Hi, I'm Rihanna Sartorius. I'm an 8th grade English teacher, and I've been attending Saddleback for several years, a part of the Single Life Ministry for about 5 years or so. And I also edit and write for the Saddleback Singles blog, if you've read any of our books.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
All right.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I have been running Saddleback for the past year and a half or so since I moved back out of state, and I absolutely love it. And I actually currently lead the single mom ministry here at the church on Saturdays at 4 p.m. So if anyone's interested in that.
Good morning, my name is Ryan Arhue. I am been attending Saddleback here in Lake Forest since 2012. Single dad of 2 awesome children, 12 and 9, and I lead the motel ministry outreach here at through the local peace center.
Hello, everyone. So excited you guys are here. It's going to be a great time. My name is Kaylee, and I've been coming to Saddleback for about 8 years now, and on the leadership team for about a year. So I'm out on the patio after service and excited to connect with you guys.
Hey guys, my name is Greg. I've been with Saddleback since 2014. I've been part of the singles ministry since 2016, and I lead a couple of men's small groups here.
Hi, I'm Dawn. I've been at Saddleback for 25 years, and I also am a church counselor. I am the prayer coordinator for the singles team, so if you ever have a need, feel free to approach me, or really anybody with a red lanyard. And I'm also on the pastoral care prayer team.
And I'm Jacob. I'm Jacob. I've been coming to Saddleback for about 8 years as well. I've been a part of this ministry for several years and also lead a small group through Saddleback as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Hold on to that mic. Great. Great. I took off my jacket because we're ready to get to business.
Yep, here we go.
Here we go.
All right, so as we said, this is the topic on dating.
Yes.
All right, so our first question, we want to know, how do I know if I'm ready to date? Meaning, how am I healthy enough? When am I ready to jump in? Who's our first?
I'll start on that
You want
one.
to start? Okay, I'll follow you.
So my first point I'd like to get across to you is that if you're going to start the dating process, I highly recommend that you truly be single. And this is mainly speaking to the people who have been through divorces, that when you're separated or when you're going through a divorce, you are very vulnerable and very fragile. And it is not the time to fill a void by trying to get into a relationship with somebody. You will hurt yourself and you will probably hurt them as well. So I would highly recommend that you truly be single before you start engaging yourself and be healthy enough to get in a new relationship. The second point I want to get across to you is that you really have to be in a place where your hope is put in the Lord and not in a person to complete you. So you should not be thinking that if I get in this relationship or if I meet somebody, then I'll be happy, then I'll be fulfilled. You want to be in a place where God is filling that void for you. There's actually a verse, Psalm 137, that says, "Put your hope in the Lord, for with the Lord is unfailing love." There is no place we can find unfailing love than with Him, and it's not a person. So make sure you're putting your hope in Him and not in a relationship, and that will give you a healthy emotional stance to get into a relationship with somebody. This is a long-winded one, sorry.
Love it.
The last one is just be content where you're at. You have to be content in your singleness. It's not that you're searching for something else, which kind of goes along with the other learn to be content whatever the circumstances. There is a reason you're in your singleness. There is a reason for this season, and you will have something you need to learn. So I highly advise that this is the time to get yourself healthy. This is the time to really visit anything that you need to address in your life so that you are a better place to be with somebody else and develop a healthy relationship once you do encounter it. 411.
So I want to just kind of good transition to piggyback on that. If you have been married or in a long-term relationship, you have to remember what happens with us, or realize what happens is that in life, we are attracted to our deepest level of brokenness. So if you have come out of one relationship and you just think, I'm just going to leave that behind me and I'm going to move on with that person, you're going to be disappointed. Because psychologically, and I won't even go into that, we have a baseline and we're subconsciously drawn to what's familiar. So in that deepest level of brokenness that we haven't healed, if we were rejected, if we were abused, if we were left, you might think you've moved on to somebody different, but inevitably you're going to get the same thing in a different package. So if you ever see people who go relationship to relationship saying, I'm not doing that again, and they end up with the same thing, that's why. So there is no fast track to healing. Whatever that thing is in your gut that you're holding on, everybody think about that. That thing that you and God know that you just don't want to deal with it, because subconsciously you're going to be drawn to that. That's why healthy attracts healthy and unhealthy attracts unhealthy. That level of brokenness you'll see in somebody else and it'll draw you. And there is no replacement. And before I pass to Greg, the shortest way through healing, you go right through the middle. Your mind will tell you it's scarier to go through the middle. You want to go around, but that's the fastest way. God says we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. We were never meant to camp there. So move through it.
Somebody preaching.
Preaching.
Church today. All right.
To echo what Dawn said, before my current girlfriend, I actually took off dating for 2 years, and there was a pretty well-known ministry at Saddleback called Celebrate Recovery that specifically deals with the hurts and hang-ups that she was talking about. And for 2 years, I was going to that at various campuses 4 or 5 nights a week, and really just like drilling in, like working the program and trying to just work on myself. And I was content with that. And I knew at the time when I was not when I was comfortable not being in a relationship, that's kind of when I knew, okay, like I don't need this relationship to complete me or to validate anything, and that was a big part of it. So.
Love it. Thank you. Next question here. This is kind of a loaded question. It comes in a couple of different parts here, so I'm just going to read the whole thing, and then let's see what our panel has to say about that. This question goes like this. How do I know someone is interested in me? How do I show someone I'm interested in them without being creepy? How do you ask someone out on a date? How do I know it's a date versus just friends hanging out? Can a girl ask a guy out? See, it's a lot of different parts there. Who'd like to answer that?
Hi.
Kaylee, you're brave. You're brave.
Okay. So first, how do I know if a guy's interested in me? Women, I believe time and attention are kind of like the two biggest things. A guy isn't going to pursue you and text you and all that stuff if he's not interested, right? So I feel like if he's around you in your friend groups, if he's making a point to really ask you questions about how you're doing, and because I feel like doesn't come as naturally to guys sometimes. So, but women kind of crave that deeper connection of how was your day and tell me about yourself. So to really make us feel loved and valued in that way. So just by showing up and maybe remembering things too. So if you're starting to see that in some of your friendships and relationships, so the time and attention piece I think is really huge.
I love it. Great. Who else?
Yeah, great points. I want to concur with that. Are they looking for opportunities to talk to you? Are they trying to find out about you? Are they trying to dig deeper about you? Should be looking for opportunities to see you again, making future plans. Body language is another big indicator. Are they smiling? Are they laughing at your jokes? Humor is the ultimate icebreaker, so if you can be funny, that's very helpful.
or ladies, even if they're not that funny, but you're interested in them, just laugh.
Just laugh.
That'll really help with that. laid at the foot of Boaz.
Yes.
Okay, men, I know some of you would like that if women did it, but that's a little too creepy. So now that does not But yeah, making sure you're just, you're surrounding, like ladies, encouraging the guy, because sometimes, you know, it's hard and scary, right? So that rejection, I feel like women feel that just as much as men, you know? So making sure you're, making it a point to encourage him. So we were kind of talking about a little earlier, like, well, what if the guy does ask a girl out, and she's like, no, I'm busy. In her mind, you know, that's like, oh, I'm hoping he asks me out another time. But maybe in that situation, ladies, we can be like, oh, but I'm free Saturday night, or I'm free Sunday night. So that kind of gives them, okay, they're not completely blowing me off, right? But kind of opening up another opportunity for hanging out in that way.
Kaylee, would you say that, I mean, this is a very specific question, this last one, can a girl ask a guy out? Based on kind of what you're saying there, what would you say?
Definitely, yeah. I feel like today is really different too, where, you know, depending on personality too, there are some guys who are really nervous and some women who are maybe more comfortable with that. So I feel like if, you know, right time and place and setting is really important, but yeah, I definitely believe that a woman can have that.
Did with Boaz.
Right, that's very
Yeah, can a girl ask a guy out? Yes. Let me explain. Men in general, I think, should take the initiative. We're asked to be the head of the household. We're also asked to be the spiritual leader of the family, but we live in confusing and complicated times. So a few examples of would be totally appropriate and okay for a girl to ask a guy out. Perhaps the girl that the guy is interested in just has a really outgoing personality. The guy might be a little bit shy. So in that circumstance, I think it's completely appropriate and okay for the girl to ask the guy out. Men, we're not always the sharpest tools in the shed, ladies. So sometimes a guy might be confused. Maybe he's not keying into some of the hints and the tones that you might be interested in him. Sometimes we're missing opportune times to take the initiative and ask you out. And sometimes, guys, we just get stuck, and we need a little help.
Thank you for sharing that. Our next question. What, panelists, do you look for in someone who you would like to date? And how do you determine these things?
I think a great way to start is, like anything in life, is pray about it. You're going to pray on every aspect of your life. Definitely pray about the person that God wants to bring into your life. You want to make sure that you're going to be spiritually connected, that you're going to be helping each other, spiritually leading each other spiritually, and just coming together. So I think another important thing is not to look at the way that the world views dating. The world wants us to focus on beauty and on financial status, and we know that beauty fades, and our financial status can change at any time. So again, looking at those characters that God has for us. And if you are with someone that's not going to lead you spiritually, they're probably not the right person that God has for you. And I'm a list person, so I like to write down a list of the characteristics and qualities I'm looking for someone. And I pray over that list. And it may change from time to time, and that's also going to be to help you when you are dating someone, those deal breakers, those things that you will compromise and not compromise on. And so really take that list and pray over it, and pray for God to show you, and pray for God to bring you that person too, because that's the ultimate goal.
Well, I don't think there's anything else to add quite to that. That was amazing. But I mean, we've all made that, you know, been in a dating environment or in a relationship where you made a dating decision based on the wrong characteristics, right? We've all done that, right? I was trying to look past this, or I was, you know, oh, they'll change, or what have you. And so I think this changes as you mature in your faith. You know, if you asked me 10 years ago what was important to me in a woman, that's vastly different than it is today. And as a result of many things that have happened in my life because of that list that I had back then, you know, that's caused a lot of situations that I find myself in today, and scars, right? I mean, you know, the emotional wounds that we've unfortunately been a part of because of the results of our actions. And so, you know, while attraction is always attraction, you know, what are those characteristics that you're looking for that speaks to the quality of person that you want to be with? What is going to create the foundational aspects of a relationship that's going to be, you know, see you through financial struggles, the economy's crashed, etc. Unfortunately, I'm a single dad. I've been through a divorce. I look at a marriage completely different than I did back then. The other thing I thought is am I the type of person that the person I'm trying to attract would be attracted to? Am I the type of person that the person that I'm trying to attract would be attracted to? And what that means is, am I going to things like this? Am I trying to be healthier? Am I trying to grow closer in my walk with the Lord? Am I involved in things that is going to put me in a position to meet that woman that is thinking the same way? So am I going to bars on a Friday night, or am I going, like Greg said, to CR? That's awesome. That's going to put me in line with somebody who's thinking the same way.
Awesome. Last question for this dating section. This is kind of a neat one. It says, what about differences? Do we have to be of the same faith? How do you feel about missionary dating? Hot topic.
Yeah, well, I just want to lead off with, a verse, 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Brianna.
Good verse, yeah. God, I think, chose the word yoked very intentionally. It wasn't an accident he used that analogy, because the only time two animals are yoked together is when there's work to be done. There's no other time. So when you think about that and the purpose of being yoked together, it's not just to align the animals forward in the same direction, but it's because those animals have qualities that complement each other to do the work well. And when they're equally yoked, that load, that burden, the work to do is a lot lighter. So when you're unequally yoked, when one animal is stronger, in this case we're talking about faith, than another, that other animal will be chafed and pulled and irritated, and it will be a very difficult time together. So in the perspective of spirituality, like Dawn and others were saying, when you're very healthy, you attract where you're at. Sure. So the healthier you are, and the more you see God in your life, the less you'll accept somebody else who's not going the same direction you are. So if you're in ministry and you're involved and your heart is growth and spiritual maturity, it's going to be hard for you to be with somebody who's not, because when you're pulling that load together in marriage, with kids and life, you want someone who's pointed forward that same direction you are, that's going to attack problems in the same way that you are, God-centered, because conflicts and trouble will come up, and it's how you handle those problems that you want them coming from a God-centered mentality. Are they showing fruits of the Spirit, and are they loving you the way God loves you, not the way, like they said, the way the world loves is way different than the way God tells us to love each other. So I think that equally yoked is really a deal breaker. Not to be equally yoked is a deal breaker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would just add to that it basically is all encompassing for the way you see your family in the future, the people that you're going to be surrounding yourself. Like if your faith isn't the same, it's going to look completely different to the other person. And it's not just that maybe you'll kind of be discouraged by that, but the other person will also see that and maybe reject that too. So it's just going to be it won't work out in the end. And at the same time too, even if they have the same faith as yours, but the faith is on different levels maybe, I think that could be something to watch out for too, because I mean, just because someone says, they're a believer, but I mean, you could clearly not see any fruit in their life, or, differences than what you would want, for your future too. That could be, cause problems down the road as well. So.
Love it. I love what both Jacob, you, and Brianna are saying there. I mean, life is already difficult as it is, right? Relationships is already so difficult as it is, and if you're pulling in opposite directions, I mean, my gosh, that just makes something difficult that much more challenging.
Okay, so we are moving into our next topic. And this one is called boundaries. And I am so thankful that we're acknowledging some of these things that are really difficult.
Yeah,
Tom and I have shared with the college kids recently around physical boundaries. And this conversation is going to talk about physical, emotional, and spiritual. And so I just appreciate that we're talking about that today. And so panel, thanks for are just like running into hard topics.
Yeah.
So it's really hard.
I love it. I love it that we have an environment like this. I'm thinking to myself, where was this 10 years ago, 15 years for me? You know,
Totally.
I could have benefited from this, but yeah.
And
this
just,
is great.
especially if we look at the first one, the physical, just acknowledging the sexualized world that we live in right now. Tom, you've preached on the amount of pornography happening out in the world.
Yeah. 68% of Christian men admit to viewing porn regularly. 68% of Christian men admit to viewing porn regularly. Yeah, so I mean, we live in a highly sexualized world. Yeah.
So I love this first question. If we're talking about physical boundaries, what are the lines that we draw? How do you continue to honor those boundaries? And if we mess up, what do we do? And so I just love that we're tackling this.
Go ahead, Mike. You want to go?
You want me to go first? Okay. Knowing that my love language is physical touch, I need to refrain from anything physical until I've built a good trust and a long relationship with someone. Because I know that once the physical starts, my brains seem to fly out through my ears. And I become overly smitten with chemistry. And that doesn't bode well for a long-term healthy relationship. In addition, to honor God, honor my dating partner, honor myself in the relationship, and to receive God's blessing. 1 Thessalonians 4 says that there should be no sex before marriage. So I find it mandatory for me that I do not have sex prior to marriage, so that my commitment to God and that relationship's commitment to God and trust is not compromised. So in breaking down my physical boundaries into a more colloquial term of hanky-panky, I would like to say I would eventually have some hanky, but no hanky-panky before marriage.
So, is this being recorded? What happened? Cut.
Okay, well, my...
Save us, Stephanie, save
I know,
us.
yeah, here we go. All right, I'm speaking. Okay, so my view is, obviously, from the get-go, this has to be addressed. This is not something that goes silent for a while until the opportunity pops up. Because there's no better way to be prepared than to address it early and make boundaries as to what is acceptable and what is not. And this is different for everybody. The key is recognizing what your weaknesses are and being honest about that. Not trying to push it to see how strong-willed you are. That's not the time to make a decision. Time is early and know where the boundaries need to be drawn. I love the verse that he said, the 1 Thessalonians 4, and I just want to say the actual verse for you guys because it's very powerful. For this is the will of God, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor and not in the passion of lust. That's huge. I think it's very powerful for us in this especially. The other thing, make sure both people have to be on board. It cannot be one person trying to pull the other to make sure that the boundaries are kept. Both people have to be equally accountable for it, otherwise it will never work. The other thing is be careful of your influence. What are you watching? What are you listening to? Are you going to your first date to go watch 50 Shades of Grey? Probably not a great idea, right? So make sure the music you're listening to, the TV shows you're watching together are not leading you astray and are influencing you in the proper way to guide you in the way that you want to go. And the other part of the influence thing is people. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you around other couples who do not believe that sex before marriage is an issue? Then you may be pulled away. I would highly recommend you stay with people who are married that did abstain because they could have great advice for you when you struggle. And B, make sure your friends and other couples that you hang out with are on the same level so that it will help you and make you stronger. That's all I got on that.
I love this. It's so practical. So
Yeah.
good. Am I allowed to kind of tune in here a little bit? As the men's pastor here, and Beth, you and I have talked about this. One thing that I'm learning more and more, I've seen it in my own life and in ministry, and especially dealing with Saddleback men, men give love to get sex. Okay, I see some of you jotting that down. Men give love to get sex. Women give sex to get love. And that's just the way that it is. Men give love to get sex, women give sex to get love, and it speaks going. We were kind of talking about like our baselines and where we're at and where the hurt is and what we're craving and some of the practical answers we see here. I mean, that's just something that is a reality out there, and something that we're dealing with right now. It lends perfectly to question number two, and that is about emotional intimacy. How do you guard your heart? What does that practically look like? How do you know how much to share? Who's got that one?
Okay. So guarding your heart is so important, and it's in God's word, and it can become so difficult when you are dating. You have met that person and you want to share everything with them, and just don't. Not right away. Just take your time. If you are in a godly relationship and you are both spiritually connected, then you know that you are going to get to know each other. You're going to take your time. A good example would be definitely on a first date. Don't go and say what happened with your ex, or if you're having family issues, probably not a good thing to do. But trust that God will give you that right time to reveal your past. If you are going along together, then you know that time will come to feel trustworthy. And it's just protecting your heart, and we need to do that. And that helps too with the physical part of it. If you are just keeping yourself safe and following God's word, then that will keep you from hurts and hang-ups in the end too.
So with my current girlfriend, we were friends for 4 months before we ever went on a date. And by friends, I mean we only hung out in groups at church. We'd go out after, Saturday night worship service in groups, and we'd only hang out with other people from our small group. And, we were able to, through that process, slowly open up to one another, and there wasn't any, really serious conversations from the get-go. It was kind of casual. And then once we started, dating, just, one-on-one, we would slowly open up about, intimate stuff, that's from our past or just things about ourselves. And, she would share something, and then the next week I would share something personal, and we kind of go back and forth, and that, over time is how it evolved.
And then finally, if we talk about spiritual boundaries, when do you even start reading the Bible together or praying together?
That's such a good question, Beth. And let's just put this in perspective. If you're showing up at your first date with your 1970 concordance this big in your King James Bible, and you plop those suckers down and say, let's start in Genesis, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Of course, it's never wrong to pray. It's never wrong to read the Bible. But what happens, and I'm just going to be honest, and this thing is, in singles communities, in churches, there are predators. The leadership team, some of us have been having some conversations about that, and people come from outside the churches thinking, oh, I'm going to pretend to be a Christian for a hookup. Unfortunately, and this is not a stereotype, we're seeing this with men from some other churches that have been doing that. So I encourage you to be authentic. Of course, it's never wrong. Once you get to the point of being exclusive, it's kind of like when your kids are in high school. You kind of expect them to mess up, and good luck to those of you with younger kids. But that's the safe place at home. Go blow it, have your natural consequence, come home in recovery. In the early dating, you're getting to know each other. If he tells me, and of course I'd be a cougar, I'm such a good Christian and I'm doing this. Do you ever see her reading his Bible? When you're having a meal together, is he or she initiating prayer? When one initiates, is the other one participating? You have to look at, and I'm going to talk about this in a later question, actions versus words. The person we're at mute, are their actions reflecting? When you're driving by an accident scene, is anybody like, man, let's lift them up to the Lord? What are the natural instincts of the person? And truly, to answer the question, once you become exclusive, you're in an old-fashioned word, like Mike likes to use old-fashioned words, courting. So in courting, you should be moving together spiritually and along that same path. And again, if it's not a match, don't be afraid to get out. I hear people say in my counseling stuff, oh, but I spent 2 years of my life. Well, you're saving 20. Get out. Because how many, and I've been married twice. I mean, how many of us have gotten into relationships or marriage where someone presented one thing and we believe the words and not the actions? a lot. So you have to be looking at the actions and the fruits, but I would also finish with, once you are exclusive, and we don't recommend being unequally yoked, you should be actively in the Word together, lifting each other up and moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. You said something there about predators. I mean, it was just a couple of weeks ago, right? That our own Pastor Rick Warren was there with Kay and with Beth Moore, and he was talking about predators, and we're well aware that you're right. There are wolves in sheep's clothing, and I believe Pastor Rick was very subtle about it. He said, "We will hunt you down." So you need to know that this is a church that will hunt predators down.
And I just want you to know from Rick's leading, and this is important, I didn't mean to talk on this. I mean, there's a predator from another church. 2 weeks ago, I went out with our singles after Saturday, and I hope you do all join us there. And I haven't even actually shared this with Chris and the staff yet, where they were telling me about a couple guys from another church who are leaders in another church coming, carrying their Bibles and praying on women. But I want you to know, like the hunt it down, Chris Reed hunts them down.
Yeah, he
Tom
does.
hunts them down.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, these are bad ASS pastors, okay? I saw him. There was I just want you to know, you're safe. I saw him. We identified his predator, and he's not here anymore. So I don't want you to live in fear. I want you to know you are safe. We are here because we love you and you're protected.
All right, take the mic away from me. I do have one more question about boundaries. Do boundaries change as relationships progress? That's a question that a lot of us have. Do they actually change as the relationship moves along?
Who's got this one? Oh, that's me. So yeah, this is a tough question. So, I love what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, we're to be salt of the world. And if the salt loses its saltiness, what good is it? And I think in dating, a lot of us, listen, I'm just going to speak from experience. We've lost our salt. And I remember what somebody said at a symposium like this years ago. He said that as he and his girlfriend were dating, that when they went to the beach, they had shirts on because they didn't want to, have their eyes see something that would cause them to stumble. Now, we hear that through the lens of extreme. That's extreme, right? Because of the fact of what we hear in the world that, sex is something that's very standard and accepted in today's dating culture. But hearing that stood out to me, that somebody took such intentional action to protect their relationship, to create boundaries and saying that we're not going to let temptation get in, and that we're going to cause our actions in these environments where we accepted to be in a bikini or a bathing suit, etc., because we're at the beach. It's easy for us to excuse the temptation because of the fact that we're in an environment that allowed us to be in that situation. And I'll never forget what they said. Because again, it comes down to what type of relationship are we trying to create? Boundaries help us to create that. It helps us to keep on track. Now, some of the things we talked about, emotional, physical, spiritual boundaries, in some aspects they can change. For myself, I have kids. Do I bring somebody into meeting my kids, after, a date or two? Probably not. That's something that will be down the line. So I'll keep a boundary around that because of the fact that I don't want my children to be connected with somebody that it's not going to be a long-term relationship. Spirituality, reading the Bible, that's a great thing. But that can tie you emotionally to somebody that oftentimes we do too quickly, right? As you start to go through this process, you'll go maybe through a period of life, like Ray was saying, 2 years, and you are just ready to jump into a relationship. And the first person that, we enter into, we just go way too fast. We spill our guts way too much emotionally, physically, spiritually, etc., and it connects us at a much deeper level than we should be at that point. Creating those boundaries allows us to, again, slow the relationship but keep it at a pace so that we're getting to know each other and creating that foundation. I love what somebody said, too, about having an accountability partner. Having an accountability partner that we can go to and say, okay, hey, we messed up. Or, hey, here's somebody that's a godly relationship that we really admire. We want you guys to walk this relationship out with us because we want to, again, create that boundaries. If we mess up, we don't want to hide in that. We want to be able to go to somebody and say, hey, here's where we feel. Help us to get back on track so we can create that environment that we're looking to do so.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
I find myself like just so into what you all are saying.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, oh wait, I have to ask a question.
Exactly. We're making good time, though. We're making good time. Yeah.
Seriously. All right, we are in topic 3 now. So this is like focusing on the beginning of the relationship. So you kind of laid these foundations. You're now moving into, I think there's something here. All right. So how long do you date until you become exclusive? And when you do, how do you determine that? Jacob?
Okay, yeah, I'll kick this one off. Basically, I don't know if there's an exact answer for this. I mean, obviously it depends on kind of how much you're able to see each other, how much you'll be able to have a conversation. Is there like a little bit longer distance to where you're not able to maybe be around the person enough? But I think the main point is to be able to get genuine answers and have those really, I guess, important conversations to what's kind of your vital factors, right? So I don't know if anybody has been to the True Love Dates kind of grouping that we had a little while back, but Deb Folletta, the author that came and spoke, kind of spoke on, what are your red flags, your yellow flags, your green flags, that kind of thing, and just kind of absolutely determining what those are for yourself, and really seeing, if the person does have any of the red flags that pop up that you should probably just walk away from. But I'd say probably after the first few weeks, you should have a good understanding of, what the other person's kind of, how they relate to you in that way. So.
My view, because I agree with Jacob, there's no timeline you can put on something like that. For me, it's emotional vulnerability. At what point during a relationship do you feel that you're emotionally involved enough that if you found out they were dating somebody else, that would hurt you? And if you've gotten to that point, then I think it's time to have that conversation with somebody and get their view on it. And it actually can speak volumes. Their reaction to how you approach that could speak volumes of how they feel about you and the relationship. So either way, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Okay, awesome. Love this next question because it's so practical, especially in terms of the beginning stages of a relationship. Do you talk about holding hands, kissing, being physical, or do you just jump right in?
Well, seeing the reaction I had from Hanky Panky, I think I need to describe Hanky, what I mean by Hanky. And that's holding hands and kissing, okay? And that's after you get a relationship. So in knowing I want to be more romantic and I really feel it and let it happen spontaneously, I know for myself that I can be easily overtaken by chemistry, my language of touch, love language of touch. That's my relational kryptonite. And also I've had many unusual circumstances of abandonment in my life, so I have a heightened sense of rejection and apprehension. So I really find it hard sometimes and apprehensive about trying to hold someone's hand. So what I try to do is not make the person that I'm dating feel unattractive at all or I'm some unemotional cold fish and not caring about them. So I might at that time decide that I should bring up the challenges that I have with this within me. And in doing so for the purpose of trying to build more honesty, openness, and intimacy in the relationship. And James 5:16 says, admit your faults to one another and pray for each other. And so I think in doing that, in expressing my thoughts and feelings, I've got my faults out there, so there it is, your turn, and then take it from there.
Thanks, Mike. And I kind of, you kind of covered this, Tom, with, how men do it. So the counselor in me wants to give you the facts, because women, you're like, but I don't understand. I gave myself to him. I thought he loved me. Here's the physiology. Don't be embarrassed. There is a nerve that goes from a man's eye to his penis, and he is visually stimulated. And I tell you that because I have a lot of women come to me for prayer, for counseling, saying, but I gave myself. And you know what you're doing? You're trying to fill the love hole. And just like we talked about, for him it's a release. Hormones are being released. God made it that way. He made it that way for marriage. It's not wrong. But I tell you that for women, to educate you, because I don't know if the men will say this when we women leave, but I want you, it doesn't mean your man is bad or weak. Men have to work very hard to look forward. Godly men I know train themselves not to look, because Pastor Rick travels with a team. We have a lot of accountability rules in the church. So I tell that to the women, to educate you. And I am one of communication. I would identify it up front. If you're on a dating app, I am a strong follower of Christ. You know, you will get other religions if you are vague. I'm a strong follower of Christ living biblical values because we do promote celibacy and put it out there up front. Because if I'm dating someone and he goes to hold my hand and he touches me, I'm getting that sensation, right? And he's going, I'm getting lucky tonight, and I'm going, oh, my love hole is full. And that's what it looks like. So always clarity up front, define the baseline, and if you have violated, you know, the thing and you hooked up, forgive yourself. God forgives you. When we confess our sins to God, great Celebrate Love, Celebrate Recovery saying he forgives us. When we confess to each other, it heals us. Remember, talked about, I think, Ryan having an accountability partner do that. But and never be afraid to define your boundaries up front.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to play a little devil's advocate there, Dawn. I think just if it happens naturally, because I know a lot of women like the spontaneity and kind of asking may take a little bit of the romance out of it up front. So I feel like that's completely okay as well. So I think it's really important to know the person that you do want to hold hands with and that you do want to kiss, because then it's like you know their past a little bit more. So it's like, do they have, you know, struggles? What is their struggles or their past? Have they had something happen where they need that boundary of you to ask and communicate? So I definitely think it is case by case, because someone could have struggled with that kind of emotional intimacy or boundaries in the past. So I feel like then you would want to be respectful and ask. But I do think there is some romance and stuff in not asking and feeling the moment, and also being just natural with it. But hopefully you have that already, that connection of being friends and knowing that person and their personality and needs in that way. Definitely goes back to boundaries. Yep.
So then, is it okay to date multiple people at the same time? What do you think about quality dating versus quantity dating?
Okay, I'll take it first. In the past, I've always been a dedicated one-partner dating type of guy. And sometimes that doesn't work best. I was raised from a non-Christian home and was relationally schooled by Hollywood movies and TV. So it really led me into a path that kind of like Samson and Judges in the Bible, where he said, "She looking good, get her for me," which is all about chemistry. So, and that doesn't work too well in a long-term type of relationship. So it depends on the other person too. And so I've been through a divorce and really struggled with that. So I got deeper into the Bible. I got into counseling and actually became a counselor and started leading a lot of groups, and that helped me a lot. So a few years ago, I felt like, hey, I think I might be healed enough where I can start dating again. So I started reading some Christian dating books. Dr. Henry Cloud said something that I never considered and thought, that's not me, that's not going to work. And he said, you need to date a bunch of people. And that way you get to know and make it friends. Make it about friends first. And that way you get to know more about yourself, more what you want, what you don't want, and you might have more time to meet the right person. And so I did that, and my old worldly thinking changed, and I feel a lot better about it today. And let's see what scripture that was. Romans 12:2, it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." So that really renewed my way of thinking about dating, where now I think, you know, as long as I keep it friends first, I can date a lot of people or just one person. It depends. It depends on my discernment.
Well, I'm going to say it a little different, because you don't want to become the next person on The Bachelor, is all I'm going to say. So, we talked about this before. Like, you have to be careful. And you have to communicate. It's what we've all been saying before. So, there's, to me, without getting caught up in semantics, there's a difference between a date and a difference between dating somebody. So you're having coffee, you're talking to somebody, you're getting to know somebody, you should get to know a lot of people through church, hanging out afterwards, social situations, but make sure you're communicating all the way through. You don't want to blur lines, because gentlemen, girls talk to their friends. And if you're going to coffee with us today, and we found out you went to coffee with another friend on Friday, right, we might kind of stop. That's not, you don't want to be seen as a player, somebody who is, casting that white net. So definitely in the camp of quality versus quantity, but again, that date versus dating. It's just coffee is something I say to my friends. It's just coffee. Somebody wants to get to know you better, grab coffee. You don't know if you're going to marry that person, and why would you not have coffee or go hang out with somebody else later on? That's again kind of back to that emotional boundaries and communication. You're getting to know people. So when you have that wide net and dating and coffee and getting to know a lot of people, and that wide net, that safe space is in groups. It's with your small groups. It's getting to know somebody, and then when you decide that that's somebody I want to get to know better on that deeper level, not just the surface layer of do we get along, do we have the same humor, then that intentional dating someone should be one-on-one in those conversations. You just want to constantly communicate and not blur those lines with whoever you're going out with, to respect them. And God says, right, we want to honor who we're with and love others like God loves us, and not take advantage or hurt somebody. If you are dating somebody or going out with somebody and you feel like, I feel like they're more invested in me than I am in them, or vice versa, then you need to be transparent with where you're at.
Yeah, and I just want to jump on the quality and quantity dating, because we had a conversation about that from the Henry Cloud book. I read that book, and I'm an introvert, and so I got so much anxiety, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to date multiple people, and I've always been a disaster. Like, I'll find different things that I like in each person, and then I chose the wrong person. I'm just by myself. So when I was really thinking about quality versus quantity, and society tells us too that we should be dating. You should be going out on 5 dates a week, a week. And sometimes that can leave you after that date that you've had within the first 5 minutes. You're like, how do I text my friend to get myself out of here? And then you go home and you think, oh, another failed date, or it just leaves you emotionally depleted sometimes. So when you do take that time to really take that quality in a person versus just feeling like you always have to go out, it can also help you to take that time. Again, it goes back to the characteristics and everything of who you really want and who you really want to spend that time with.
I love how we're getting like both sides of the spectrum,
So good.
right?
I was thinking that too.
But like the common thread is I'm hearing conviction and communication.
Yeah, it's good.
Like what is your core conviction from scriptures, from the Spirit, and can you communicate that well? Can you level set by communicating? I love it. Love it. Last topic. This is topic number 4, and it's ongoing assessment as the relationship grows, as the relationship continues. What are some ways that we can have ongoing assessment? And so the first question is this: how do you recognize red flags? And what do you do once they've been recognized?
Okay, I'll go first on this. So this is super important, because what we see happen when there's a red flag is we tend to minimize. And sometimes, and it can be men or women, the codependency of, yeah, that's an issue, but I can fix them, or they say they're working on it. Again, this is actions versus words. And if it's a deal breaker, know your list. I know people have shared they have lists. I don't have a list, because I see people get stuck. It's okay, God bless the list, because it's a good thing to keep you in track so you don't compromise yourself. But for a deal breaker, and I heard an assistant district attorney here at Saddleback speak at this on a peace conference, and this always stuck with me. She said, we are the only thing God created that doesn't live on instinct. I remember being with my kids in Santa Barbara on one of those whale boats, and I'm like, how do those baby whales know to be born there and go to Alaska? Instinct. And what happens is humans, and these animals live on instinct that God made. We rationalize it. We get that feeling in our gut, and we're like, well, but Greg says he's okay, and my mom says he's okay. And actually, that's how a lot of people end up, especially as kids being abused. Kids have good instincts, and they'll know Uncle Bob is creepy. And the mom's like, it's Uncle Bob, go give Uncle Bob a kiss. And we condition our kids from a young age to ignore instinct. So my main thing to you would say this: trust your gut if something's off. And if it's a deal breaker, like an addiction, mental illness that's not well managed, trust it, because you're not going to fix it. You're not going to change it. If you put your hand up, you're only responsible and can control what's on this side of your palm. And if it is something like an addiction, porn, drugs, alcohol, and it's like, honey, I have 3 days sober, and I'm doing so well, and I'm going to see her like on Friday. No. It takes 12 months of continuous change with an intervention, with a program, with a sponsor, and with accountability people for sustained change with an addiction. So I want to talk to that because you're not fixing it. And if you have one yourself is not in control, it needs to be worked on. And I'll just self-disclose something really quick on that trusting the gut. I told you guys I was married twice in college. First time 3 years, second time 24 years. And in that first marriage, I knew I shouldn't marry him. The pastor at the church is like, baby, you want a car in the back? And said the same thing to my soon-to-be husband. And I ignored my gut so much that I walked up the aisle and I spent the 45-minute ceremony counting the hairs in his eyebrows. Because I knew I shouldn't be there. And I was like 21 or something, like 22, and I was just pushing it down. And it didn't last long. And in my second marriage, I mean, it lasted a long time, but I did the same thing. I couldn't walk down an aisle after the first experience, so I thought, I'll just go hello and get it over with quickly so it doesn't hurt. Hello? What was wrong with me in my 20s? Trust your gut. I thought if I got married and I was part of the married people group, I would fit in. I'd be loved, treasured, adored, that I would be invited to the things all the married people do. And I was like a married single person. And there's no lonelier place than being in a marriage where you're alone.
Yeah.
Oh, Dawn, you just brought it. I think of the little yellow flags too about someone's character. If you're out to dinner with someone and how they treat the waiter, or if they're on their phone the whole time, that's kind of think of those little hmms. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad and that they're going to change, but those little hmms that kind of stay in the back of your mind. Just pay attention to those, and again, it goes with guarding your heart and everything, and just, following Dawn with those boundaries and the red flags, just paying attention to them. So just those little things that are so in your gut. I think that you know, within the first few dates, I think it's those things that just stick with you. It's just acting on it, because it's really hard when you like someone. But that's why going back to the accountability and everything, that you want to honor God and you want to be with the person that God has for you.
Well, for me, recognizing red flags is knowing the difference between chemistry and character. And I used to be more about chemistry, but I saw that really was hard for me. So I started looking more deeply into character, the intent of our heart. And that is what's most important. And now, when I try to date someone, I try to get to know them for a long enough time where it starts revealing the character, so we get to know that character. And I have a motto that I taught myself, that chemistry attracts, but it's character that lasts. So, and don't be, work on your character. So just get it out there. And so I've been working on that for a lot of years now, and I'm finding that the better I can try to get my character, the easier it is for me to see the character in someone else. The healthier I get, the more easy it is to see the health in someone else. And then if a red flag ever does pop up, I like asking questions and just clarify that and just get it out there. And there's a scripture that goes along with what I'm talking about, Proverbs 20:7. For as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, so is his character. In other words, the intent of our heart, our character, is what's most important. So get it out there.
My 2 cents on this too is, which really helped me was, every time we're in a relationship, kind of goes along with Dawn and what she said about trusting your instinct. Most of us who have all been divorced could probably say that there was some point where we knew that it wouldn't work out, and we did push it down or ignored the signs. And I think for me, the biggest change was actually saying a prayer for discernment. To be able to see the things that we cannot see, because we are not powerful enough to do this on our own. It is very difficult to see the true being of people, and only God can reveal those with His eyes. So really praying for discernment to see the things you need to see to help you with these decisions. When maybe your instinct is a little off and you are trying to rationalize in your head, then use God's power of discernment to really see what you need to see to give you those answers to make the proper decisions.
I'm loving the theme here, how so much of it is what you can control and what the emotional health that you're working on, and the Celebrate Recovery, hearing that theme throughout. It is just so exciting to me. So when you look at how you're getting individual health, how long do you give someone to as they're working on something. So turning it then to when you're with a relationship and you're noticing that they're in an addiction, kind of Dawn, what you spoke to, it could take a year for some of those behaviors to change. How long? How long do you advise people to give?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Unfortunately, there's not a one-size-fits-all response. So many different factors involved. What are the issues that are having? What's the stage of the relationship? The individuals themselves. What I will say is I think there's 4 main areas that both God and the majority of Christian women are looking for in a godly man. Those 4 being strength, maturity, decisiveness, and consistency. So if you're a guy and you're not strong in any of those areas, take that into consideration. You might not be ready for a serious relationship. If you're a lady and you're considering getting into a relationship with someone where those areas aren't strong, consider this. A woman can motivate, she can inspire, she can help and support a man in his growth. But she can do all that as his friend. If you're in a relationship with a man who is not strong in those, you might be in a relationship with a man's potential. So if you're in a relationship with a man's potential, what often happens is a woman will invest a tremendous amount of time, energy, and resources into the relationship. And almost always what happens is she ends up feeling cheated for the lack of return she gets back on her investment. A woman, it's not a woman's duty, it's not her calling, it's not her responsibility, it's not her pet project to turn a boy into a man. That's his job.
Ooh, I just got something there. I'm
In church now.
Well, I'm an English teacher, and that is my struggle, right? I always see the potential in everyone, right? Do it. And you cannot date someone's potential. So what does that look like? I've been married once and engaged once, and both times I looked at myself afterwards and said, what happened, you know? And that dating potential, you know, it hit a nerve, because the first time you make exceptions as in my 20s, right? And you think, oh, all these little red flags, they're not a big deal, when we're married, it will solve the problems. Marriage never solves the problems, right? So when you talk about giving someone time, again, I wish there was an exact timeline you could check mark and say this is hitting the marks, but every situation is so different. So if your goal is marriage, the more you're invested in someone in a relationship, in marriage and kids, when you have marriage and kids, in my opinion, you leave no stone unturned. You leave no stone unturned. When you're that involved, when you're that committed, it's for life, you leave no stone unturned. But when you're going through struggle, it takes two things you probably really need are 2 people 100% committed in the fight to grow and heal together. One person's not 100% it, it's not going to work. So you need both people 100% committed to this healing and growth. And then you need to think about, you know, if you're not married, obviously we're talking about dating, so then in that respect, guarding your heart along the way and finding these red flags early on and knowing, because you're just going out on a few dates, you see those red flags, you step back, you friend zone a little bit and see what time will tell. If you're seriously dating or engaged and you see problems come up, hit them head on. And then again, are both people committed? Is this person committed to doing the work to be healthy? If a problem comes up, how do they handle that conflict? Are they willing to grow and learn from it? Are they giving up, shutting down communication? And I compare kind of going through struggles, because even healthy relationships have struggle, right? Healthy is hard, you guys, right? Healthy is hard. I wish you could just say, oh, I'm healthy, I graduated, and I don't need to work on myself anymore, we're done. But that's not how it works. There's always going to be things in the road that come up. So how someone handles conflict, how someone is working to grow is really important. And in those struggles, I kind of compare it to the stock market, I guess, right? It's ups and downs. When someone's healing through addiction or other struggles, you're going to see, I want to do well, and then I kind of messed up, and then I want to do well, and I kind of messed up. But what you want to see long-term is growth. So if you're not seeing growth, then get out. If that person is not, if that person is not continuing 100% in the fight with you to grow together, to be healthy, then my disclaimer too is abuse and physical and verbal abuse. That was one of the issues in my marriage. And the best advice I got was when my husband at the time was saying, I want to be better, I'm going to be better. We had 2 kids together, and I can do this. The best advice I got was, you can do it alone. You're going to be over there, boundaries, and I'm going to be over here, and I'm telling you I'm not going anywhere right now. But if you are going to be healthy, you can do that over here in a safe space. And God can repair anything, you guys. God can repair anything, okay? But you have to have 2 people together who are in it, and you also have to give those healthy boundaries and not put yourself in a position or place where you're going to continue to get hurt, right? So God says we forgive immediately, but we don't allow someone to keep hurting us. So you also have to, this is where this healthy spiritual maturity, or what God wants in your life, your own personal health, you can't control what other people do. You can't control their willingness to work on themselves. You can only control where you're at and where you're going to grow and what you're going to allow to influence you, your life. And for me, obviously speaking for my kids, before I would be more willing to protect them and keep bad people away because of them, not myself. I was worried more about guarding their hearts than my own. But praise the Lord, because that kept some really bad people out of my life. Getting on a tangent, but
Thank you.
For those of you who've been around Saddleback, you've heard Pastor Rick say you always date somebody for 4 seasons before you marry. Do it. And the reason that is because through every holiday, life circumstances, death, stress, ex-spouses, you will see how that person reacts. And I tell you that because a lot of people approach me and say, I gotta get married, I'm 50, I've gotta do it. And I know what I want, and God's telling me it's okay. So 3 months later, I have a friend who married a guy, eHarmony, after dating him for 2 months, and he was in another state. He moved out here, and she had to move out with her son in the middle of the night because she thought he was going to kill her. And he was a pastor at another church and a former cop. He said, check me out on LinkedIn. I could be a neurosurgeon on LinkedIn. Don't doubt yourself and wait that 4 seasons. There's no hurry.
I want to piggyback on what you ladies just shared here, talking about getting out of a relationship, okay? Specifically, how do you break up in a healthy way that is respectful of the other person? Because there's always this feeling of like, I don't want to hurt this person, but I know that this needs to end. How do you do that?
Okay, so my view, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one, but we'll give it a whirl. So when you're breaking up with somebody, it's our tendency to, I don't want to make this a conflict, I don't want to upset them, I don't want to hurt them. So we lie, and we just say it was us. I'm sorry, I'm just not in a place right now to be in a relationship. It's not you, you're fine. And I get to this point where I think, like, we're actually doing these people a disservice. Because it's really easy for us to see the bad qualities in other people, but it is very hard for us to see the bad qualities in ourselves. And only usually by people planting a seed or saying things to us where we go, you're the 3rd person that said that. I'm kind of controlling. Like, I should look at this, right? So I think it is actually a time to actually help somebody. If they do something that is hurtful or that you just don't like or that you just don't want to be in a relationship with them, obviously do not crush their hopes, dreams, and future by and saying all these horrible things about them. But it's all about planting a seed. Because then when the next girlfriend says, I think you're kind of controlling, and it's not like, maybe that's just you or maybe it's just me, but he'll go, this is the 2nd or 3rd person that said that. Maybe I should look into this. So use it as an opportunity, honestly, to help them grow in a loving, way. But use it and don't be just dishonest and roll over it because you're not helping them and you're not helping you because they're going to just go blindly to the next relationship and do the same thing. So that's my...
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Stephanie. I think for me, I kind of tend to kind of fall into like maybe being a little bit of a people pleaser when it comes to that, or kind of the guy's mentality of like I can fix this kind of thing. Even if you already see the writing on the wall or know your feet, are pretty in touch with the way you feel towards the other person. But I guess the goal is to say exactly like what is the issue in a nice polite way in order to end it. But I guess not continuing it when you know that it should end, and because otherwise, I mean, you'll just resent the person, you know, further on down the line, and they'll also be able to notice like your detachment, and you know, you're not kind of wholeheartedly in the, I guess, relationship anymore. So, and that would be mine.
Just wanted to add to that too. God says, right, to always speak the truth in love, so you're not attacking the person. Like I said, you're just trying to share how you feel. And then some advice I got as well was just a reminder and encourage you guys that a successful relationship is one where both people know it's not the right fit. Okay, a successful relationship, you know, we hope is marriage, but it's also a successful relationship if you are communicating with someone, you realize that it's not a right fit. And that's okay too. You speak the truth in love, you go your way, as friends or whatever, but you can be encouraged that it's a success if you got out of the wrong relationship.
So now just kind of getting into another practical issue we talked about a little bit ago. How and when do you introduce this person that you've entered into a relationship with to your children? What's that timeline look like?
So I think this kind of goes off of a little bit of emotional intimacy. I mean, there's really no one size fits all, but I think kind of as a relationship progresses, you know, you have to know that you're at an appropriate place to where you would want to invest your family, and you know they're committed and they get emotionally invested, and they want, you know, meet the person and they develop a relationship. And so I think kind of a clear-cut, obvious answer is just once you're official, not just dating like, hey, we're at a point where we're now exclusive and we're not dating other people. It's, you know, just you and I. I think that's kind of an obvious one. Other than that, it's, you know, it's really just once you're at that emotional maturity level with that person.
Right, and like I said, I have 2 kids. I have 2 boys. They're 14 and 17 now. And I think that, again, that timeline's a little bit different. There is no timeline per se. It's how serious the relationship is. The younger your kids are, you have to guard their hearts more too. You have to protect them and get attached more. My kids have only met 2 people I've ever dated that they knew as dating. I've had friends. Sometimes they've met people before through a small group and single parents ministry and things like that, but they don't know we're dating. So you have to be really careful with that. And if you're ever worried at all, again, listening to those little gut feelings, if I've ever dated a guy and I'm like, I don't know if you should meet my kids, then I probably shouldn't be dating him, right? But if I met a guy and I go, I could totally see myself introducing him to my kids. I'm not going to do that until I'm sure we're both equally vested in the relationship and he's going to be around for a long time. And I knew my kids were ready around when my older son was probably about 15, and he's like, Mom, you can date, hello, we can go out, now they're trying to get rid of me, but they still, I protect them. I mean, it's not our job as parents to model good dating for our kids. That's not how God designed, our relationship. But when they do see me date somebody, I want them to see a man who's going to treat me in a godly way. My kids have a dad. They don't need another dad at their ages right now. They need a man who's going to treat me well, who's going to model what a godly leader is like. And so, the younger your kids are, you are looking for somebody who's also maybe having to step into the role of a more nurturing parental role. But I encourage you, if you have kids, to go to the step family class they offer here, because that really clearly defines the boundaries a lot more.
I just have one last question. I think, Beth, you have one after that. We live in this TGIF world, right? Twitter, Google, Instagram, and Facebook, right? So TGIF, we live in this world, and every time you open up your phone or you go online, you see your friends are dating, they're getting married, everyone's happy, everyone's in love. So my question is, how do you fight against the bitterness and envy when it seems like everyone around you is perfectly in love and healthy relationships?
Yeah, that one is hard sometimes. So Pastor Rick Warren's wife, Kay Warren, wrote a book called Choose Joy. And it just really talks about finding joy in the midst of either deep pain or deep struggle.
So I know many of you here, as well as myself, find that loneliness and that despair and bitterness and envy when it comes to being single. And it is hard sometimes, and I feel like it is okay to feel that, but also to know that there is hope. So some healthy habits that I've kind of created and that I've experienced is really helpful to kind of get rid of those emotions is being in a small group. So having kind of other people, I'm in just like a women's group, which I really love, and those ladies are my rocks. So just being open and honest with your feelings. So not kind of shoving those down and kind of pretending like everything's okay, but really sharing that so you can get not only prayer, but feedback and stuff from those other either men and women in your group. So that one's, and there could be other singles in that group too, right? So you're like in that together, we're better together with that. So another one that I think is extremely important is serving. So kind of doing something where you're not only meeting other people, but taking the focus off yourself, right? When we are focusing on loving and serving other people, I feel like we're not so focused and concerned on what I don't have, but content in what God has given me. So I think, serving either with your small group or whether that's at the food pantry here at church or in women's ministry or counseling someone else, I feel like that's extremely important because there's a verse in the book of Psalms that says, if you delight yourself in the Lord, He will give you the desires of your heart. And one of the things that I feel like God has really shown me this year is just how personal He is and how much He really does care about even the smallest details that I think are, huge. And singleness is one of them. So I feel like just really finding our joy and our contentment in Christ, and that's through serving and loving other people. So I really feel like, what are we living for? To live for something bigger than ourselves. And then it's kind of like, we're not always throwing ourselves a pity party, right? Because God has blessed us with so much. So that's kind of a few of the things that have really helped me.
I think it's just all on how we view our perspective on singleness. A lot of us, like Dawn was saying early, we think and we grow up and think that, I just have to be married and then their life is going to be great. And being single, especially as an older age, is like a curse of some sort, right? So my view is just, it's all about perspective, and bitterness and envy and jealousy can all just wreak havoc on our relationships and how we view the world. And I love the verse, Galatians 5:19-21. The acts of the flesh are obvious: hatred, discord, jealousy, selfish ambition, envy. I warn you that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. So it is extremely important for us to change our perspective. Like, you can think of all the horrible things that are associated with singleness. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you're having a rough time and just want somebody to be there. But then you can also sit there and say, well, this is great. I don't have to watch footballs on Sunday and pretend that I like it. I don't have to pick someone else's clothes off the floor and put it in the laundry. I mean, it's all in how we view it. And I think you really have to see that singleness is a special time between you and God. This is the time He has for you to develop this intimate relationship with Him that would be interrupted if you were in any other relationship at this time. So really embrace that and embrace your singleness, and trust me, if you walk around in love and content where you're at, you will, like we've said this whole time, you will attract the right kind of healthy person. So really focus on that.
And I'm just going to throw something in before we go to Kira. Down here, we're like yelling at you, no, we're not. One thing, anytime you put your value in something you can lose, you're going to be disappointed. There's you, there's God. We can put a spouse, a significant other in there, and it blocks our way. Once we're okay with God, we're okay. If you put your value in your job, and does Tom like me? Does Beth want to be my friend? Does the church like me instead of God? You're going to lose. Never put your value in something you can lose. I've done that with husbands. I've done that with employers. And it will always lead to disappointment. When your heart is filled and you know you were beautifully and wonderfully made, you were knit together in your mother's womb, and God knows every hair on your head, and you're content. If God brings that person, amen. If He doesn't, you're still okay.
I think when those feelings do pop up, because it can be a spiritual attack, the enemy doesn't want us to feel joy. He doesn't want us to have happiness in our life. And so one of the ways when you're single is to say, oh, look at, you're so lonely. And the second that happens, I turn and I pray. I just pray for God to use me. And I can tell you that just from starting to mentor young women and to be part of the Girls Talk, has really fulfilled my purpose and taken away that loneliness. And you know what happens when you have that purpose? Your light begins to shine. So when you do go to that third wedding and you're that bridesmaid and you're tired, when you go out there and you get on the dance floor, you never know who's going to get out there and see you. So live your life, live it up. Use this season to live it up, girls. Have fun. And you know, I also want to say, being on the panel with these men and listening and having the discussions with these godly men just is giving me so much hope. Don't give up, ladies. Don't settle. There are good godly men, and God has one for all of us. And just don't give up, and always stay true to your values and your faith, because this is it. There are good people, good men out there that really truly have a heart for God and want to have healthy relationships.
It's true.
I was just going to say too, I mean, with Tom's TGIF kind of acronym, I mean, you're just seeing a microcosm, obviously, of everyone's life, right? So, I mean, if you feel like you're getting too wrapped up into seeing other people's life and feeling those kind of anger, bitterness, you know, all of those things, I mean, you know, maybe even unplug just for a little while, you know, a few months, just kind of go away from whatever you're kind of feeling toward, like evoking those feelings. But also understanding, I mean, obviously everyone's posting their best selves and things like that. I mean, it's not necessarily reality of what everyone's, you know, going through. So, I mean, yeah, you're just seeing just such a small portion. So, then we'll see.
Oh yeah, it reminded me of another Bible verse too, what Kira was saying, of how comparison is the thief of joy, right? So we need to just make sure, like, we're not going around comparing ourselves to other people. But yeah, that was a great point too, because people on, you know, social media share only the best moments, right? You don't really see those moments all the time that are the hard struggle and the loneliness and, yeah, the heavy filters.
I have a challenge. Everyone do a ugly post this week.
Yes.
Ugly post. All right?
Still like best life.
Yeah, exactly. Still like best life.
Well, we're down to our last question, and we've kind of already started to cover this topic, and I feel like this is really important content for any of our relationships. Tom, I'm thinking of any man and woman.
Yep.
This is all such healthy content because we see the flip side. We see marriages who are experiencing loneliness and all of these things. We're counseling and helping couples that are in marriage get healthy themselves, but it's painful and it's a process. And so for those of you that haven't been married and you're, you know, I love today, I didn't know if this was going to be like how to get a man or how to get a woman. I figured it wasn't, but like I love that it's been none of that.
Yeah.
Like it's been none about how to change and how to, but it's about you and your walk with the Lord and a deeper, because marriage is work. It's work. My husband and I are weekly therapy. It's work. And so, like Stephanie said, you're in a season where you're able to focus and have some of those benefits. I just appreciate that we call that out today.
Yes.
And so the final question is, yes, we want companionship. We all do. How do you all fight? How do you fight loneliness? How do you turn your eyes off of media, things like that? Give us some practical ways to end this morning.
Yeah, for me, it's being, I was involved for a while, almost every night of the week in some form of ministry. My small group, leading a Steps Up to a Celebrate Recovery, going to another support group, being just around other guys allowed me to just take my mind off of stuff that may have been stressing me out at work or things I was worrying about. And Celebrate Recovery has been a huge part of my life. I mean, the whole foundation of that ministry is just being connecting with other guys. I mean, you know, guys, we don't want to admit that, you know, we don't have it all together, that we're lonely or whatnot. We're prideful, and, you know, we want to say that, you know, we're the alpha males, like, we got this, we don't need other people's help. But literally, that's like polar opposite to what, you know, Scripture says. You know, the opening line of the Sermon on the Mount is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And that's the very first principle and the foundation of Celebrate Recovery. And it's only when we admit that, you know, we don't have it together, do we turn to other people to support, we turn to God for support. And, you know, going through that ministry, I have like 10 to 12 guys on speed dial on my phone that I call up when I'm, stressed out or just have some crisis or whatnot. And really just connecting with other Christian men has really changed my life. So.
I might be one of those guys that are kind of that way, but I really feel, I might be in denial here, but I really never felt the depth of loneliness, although I have felt alone a few times. And I don't know the difference between those two. So when I feel like I'm getting alone, I just get more deeply connected with God, and I've always had a lot of good godly men friends. But one time I felt really alone was 15 years ago when I went through my marital separation, and I thought it best to leave my former church, so I came here at Saddleback. And the second time I was here at Saddleback, I looked in the church bulletin and said, Hope for the Separated Men's Group. And I went, you gotta be kidding me, I never heard of such a group. So the next week I went there, and it really got me on a great path of healing. And then since I was a counselor, soon after that they asked me to become a leader, and I've been a leader and teacher there for over 14 years now here at Saddleback. And then and to get highly involved, I got into other small groups at that time, and I've been very involved with small groups, and that's kept me away from feeling alone and lonely, and it's just really helped my life a lot. So I know if I want to advance, I need to take the chance and get it out there. And so meeting other good godly men, and I'm really thankful for Tom. He's got the men's group down there, and I'm sorry, but I haven't been able to attend there lately because
I'm judging.
5 different ministries I got going on, so I don't have the time sometimes.
So I just wanted to add, so loneliness can be tough. After I came out of my marriage, I struggled with codependency. And codependency in my loneliness of a relationship really struck a nerve for many years. And so because of the fact that I was trying to fill that with somebody else, that I was trying to get my affirmation, my identity was found in what somebody else thought of me. And then when that changed, I was emotionally bankrupt. And I kept looking trying to fill that need with that other person. And, the great thing about God is that He leads us down a path for our benefit. Is that He will never let us go down a place that is not to refine us, to mature us. And it was in that brokenness that really my walk with God found a new level. I love that verse in Philippians 4:19. It says, then God will provide all of your needs according to His glorious riches, not in a woman, not in a man, not in a job, not in a bank account number, but in Christ Jesus. And so, the great thing about that verse is that all we need is found in that relationship. Jesus was lonely. Jesus had His disciples turn their back on Him. Jesus can empathize with any temptation and struggle and emotional feeling that we have. Oftentimes we make dating this idol. Right? Where we are constantly seeking this thing to fill that void when all we need is Christ. And so when you have that reality of saying, okay, God, I'm going to seek You in this. I'm going to let it happen when it happens. I'm going to try to put myself in the right situation. I'm going to try to create for myself the right emotional state that is going to attract that person and get as healthy as I possibly can. God is going to provide you with that need.
I just want to say before Beth and Tom close this, I just can't help but scan the room, and I'm going to take a liberty of speaking for my friends and peers. At the end of the second thing, next, Tom is going down with us, girls are up here, ask your questions. I see so many questions at the end of both sessions. If you're just too embarrassed to ask, please approach us. If any of us, can I say that for you guys? If any of us said anything and you have more questions, and at the end of the day, you don't know, don't leave wondering. We give our time to this ministry because we love you. And we say within the singles ministry, it's not a ministry, it's a community. I'm not even looking to be married. This isn't a place, and you might be disappointed this wasn't speed dating. But if and you're like hit with reality, and I see that in a lot of people, but don't leave. We care about you. We love you. We're willing to be vulnerable and put our stuff out there to pay it forward for the kingdom. So please approach us with anything.
Dawn and I used to be neighbors right across the street, so I
know everything.
Hey, can we thank our panel